One of the questions most often asked of me by people who know that ours is not a Christian community is, what do Unitarian Universalists talk about on Easter? The truest answer that I can offer you is usually all the wrong things. Sometimes we talk about flowers and bunnies and eggs, which are all splendid things, but that's not what Easter's about. Sometimes we tear down the childhood faiths we have rejected or argue about the laws of biology and physics, but that's not what Easter's about either. The Easter story within the Christian tradition is simply one particular cultural expression of a powerful, mythic tale that is older than human history. Easter is a story of life and death, literally and figuratively. Now, it's no coincidence that the Jewish observance of Passover and the Christian celebration of Easter frequently overlap as they do this year, because, as Reverend Judy explained to us in our story earlier, Jesus of Nazareth, whom Christians refer to as the Christ, was an observant Jew. Jesus' life is understood differently by different people. Some people believe that Jesus was God. Other people believe that Jesus was a great and special religious teacher, but a human being like the rest of us. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe that Jesus was fully human. We honor his memory and remember the powerful message of peace, love, mercy, and justice that he preached to his followers. So this is the story of Jesus. He was born in a common family in what is now Israel 2,000 years ago. He began preaching a religious message as a young man of 30. He gathered a large group of followers through the power of his teaching and gained a reputation as a man who knew the Hebrew Scripture very well and could heal sick people. People began to think that Jesus was the Savior of the Jewish people who was going to liberate them from Roman military occupation and introduce a new age of peace and justice in the land of Israel. After establishing his reputation in the land of Galilee and in the northern part of Israel, he went to Jerusalem to celebrate the Jewish holiday of Passover. While there, he caused a commotion at the temple and had a disagreement with some of the most powerful religious leaders in the country. These leaders conspired to have Jesus arrested, and after he held a Passover Seder with his friends, Jesus was taken prisoner by the Roman army, which controlled Jerusalem at the time. He was tried for blasphemy by a Jewish religious court, and his conviction was upheld by the Roman governor of the province, after which he was executed on a cross, a common Roman punishment for criminals and rebels. That is probably the shortest summary of Jesus' life that you will ever hear. But that's the story. The story of Easter is about what happened after Jesus died. The oldest Christian gospel, that of Mark, tells us that 3 days after Jesus' death, 3 women who loved him very deeply went to his tomb. Immediately after sunrise, they went to anoint his body for burial, but were shocked to find the tomb empty and the body gone. A mysterious figure, maybe an angel, told them that Jesus had risen, presumably from the dead, and could be found by his followers in Galilee. And so began the religion about Jesus, the resurrected Messiah who would redeem sinful humanity at the end of cosmic time. The Easter story, as it has been told by Christians for almost 2,000 years, strikes many people as too fantastic to believe, which it is, if we insist on viewing it as history or biography. However, if we can read it as a mythic story about our human condition and our human potential, then it takes on a whole different meaning, and it is, in fact, quite meaningful. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe that we should take the Bible seriously. not literally. And many of you have heard me say before, the truth about God is not contained in any book, but rather it is inscribed on every human heart and writ large across the face of nature. If you want to experience God, then look within yourself deeply, which is what prayer and meditation is all about, and look around you for the wonder and splendor of this fantastic, amazing creation of which we are a part. We believe that God works through the laws of nature and physics. So once Jesus died, his body didn't come back to life. But the Easter story is speaking to a deeper truth about nature and human nature. And part of that truth is on display all around us, because it's springtime and nature is returning to life after the cold, dark of winter. Winter is hard. Literally, the ground freezes. The days are short. It's cold. It's gloomy. But inside that cold, dark season, life is waiting to burst forth. And so it does. And it bursts forth in a way that requires death before life can come forth. The seed that contained within it the hidden potential to become a beautiful flower, a fruitful plant, or a mighty tree is tiny. It's a tiny seed. And that seed, in coming to life, is entirely lost. Literally. Think about the grain of wheat. We heard, as part of our prelude, now the green blade rises. Imagine a little seed of wheat falling into the ground, and the husk falls off and dies. The seed literally has to crack open, blow apart, before that shoot can come up. Life demands death for it to come forth in nature. And maybe in human nature, too. But I'll talk about that in a moment. The seed dies as the plant comes to life. And in that plant that grows out of the dead seed is the potential for the fruit which will bear a new generation of seeds into the ground in the endless cycle of birth and death and rebirth. This is the wondrous cycle of life of which we are a part. And the Easter story, as with so many mythic religious tales, is rooted in the ancient human awareness that transformation and life are emerging from death. That is, in fact, part of nature. So this morning, we have a ritual into which I invite you. I call it the Communion of Hope, and we're going to share together in a life-affirming ritual. In just a moment, I'm going to ask each of you to come forward, young and old, come forward down the center of the aisle. We'll move our equipment so people can make their way forward, and come up to the tables where you will find baskets of flower bulbs. Take a flower bulb and go back to your seat. If you look at these bulbs look dry. They look almost dead. However, each one of these bulbs holds within it the promise of life in the form of a beautiful flower. And if you take this bulb and you plant it beneath the surface of the earth, the bulb will be transformed. It needs the cool, dark soil around it and the warm sunlight above it to come to life. And if we are faithful in our planting and patient in our waiting, then we will see that some things buried in the ground do come back to life, offering beauty, hope, and inspiration to the world. And this is the message of our spiritual life as well. There are dark times in our lives, but they can contain the seeds for tomorrow's growth and beauty and wonder. And we must tend our spirits, hopefully and patiently, and have faith that new growth can and will appear within us. And when it does, it will be beautiful to us and a blessing upon the world. So I ask that you come forward, select a bulb for yourself, and return to your seats. If you don't wish to take the bulb home with you, we'll make provision for you to leave it here, and it can be planted elsewhere for you. So let us receive this communion of hope. And after We've all selected a flower and returned a bulb and returned to your seat. We'll continue with the service. So let me share a couple of things with you. First of all, these are gladiola bulbs. So if you want to plant them, you should put them, this is the bottom, and the pointy part is the top. You should plant them about 6 inches deep. They like full sun, and if you plant them now, they will probably blossom around July sometime. If you want them to blossom every year, then you really need to dig them up and hide them in the house through the winter. They don't do so well in the cold ground of New Jersey. But if you dig them up and save them, they'll blossom every year. And they'll be all sorts of different colors, no telling what yours is. If you go to my Facebook page, Rev. Justin Osterman, you'll see a gladiola, which is in fact an Easter gladiola. But you know, Easter isn't really about plants at all, much as we love flowers. You look at this, and it looks dead. It looks lifeless. It looks like nothing good could ever come from this. You know, sometimes human lives are like that too. Sometimes human lives appear, even to the person who's leading it, that there is no real future, no real possibility. Sometimes people live inside tombs of their own construction. Easter is about freedom. Easter is about belief that life insists on itself. Easter is about the possibility that a life that seemed over can in fact come back and be born again in all sorts of strength and beauty that was never imagined before. You know, sometimes our mind becomes our own tomb. Sometimes our mind constricts us. Sometimes our mind is full of all sorts of unhelpful ways of thinking. Sometimes it leads to unhelpful ways of speaking. Sometimes unhealthy ways of acting. Sometimes we are filled with unwholesome, unhealthy desires. Maybe it's a desire for something, or a desire for somebody, or a desire to be in control, or a desire to dominate something or someone. A desire to have control over some sort of resource. We live in a world in which unhealthy, unwholesome thinking leads us to try and dominate other people, other countries, the world and its resources, leading sometimes nations to the very brink of disaster because unhealthy, unhelpful, unwholesome ways of thinking and being and acting in the world are guiding policy decisions in the world. Sometimes those unhealthy ways of thinking are guiding our own lives in ways that are not life-enhancing, that are not life-promoting, that are not life-affirming. Now for us, as individuals, the question is our way of thinking and speaking and being in the world promoting life? Is it enhancing life? Is it setting us free to live life in all of its fullness? Or are we living in a tomb of our own construction, wondering why life never gets any better because no light's getting in and no light's getting out? The light is inside us already. It is that light that we are trying to have break forth and illuminate the world. Sometimes we don't see it. Sometimes we don't believe it. Easter is about unlocking the light inside ourselves so that we can be renewed, reborn, maybe even resurrected from a life that seemed more like death than anything truly promising and full of potential. And I know about that. I know about that. I didn't come here to give you a lesson on horticulture. I didn't come here to give you a lesson about religious culture. I came here to testify to Easter. I came here to bear witness to Easter because, brothers and sisters, I have lived in a tomb. I have lived in that dark place inside my own mind, and I am here to tell you that I have been set free. Not by my own will alone, only ever by the grace of God. However you understand your God, you know, God's not to be explained, God's to be experienced. And that's what Easter is about. Easter is about an experience of the holy, setting us free to live life in all its fullness and richness and abundance. And I have had that experience. You know, I used to spend a lot of time praying to the God of my understanding for all the things that I wanted. No, I didn't pray for cars and houses and things that some people do. I didn't pray for money. I prayed for how I thought I wanted to be in the world. Humble, patient, positive, gentle, peaceful, strong, understanding, accepting, and forgiving. All these virtues that I wanted to have more of in my life. And I realized that I was just telling God what to do. And I realized that the only way for me to be free was for things in me to start dying. Yeah. That's the story of Easter. Some things inside us need to die so that life in all of its richness and abundance can break forth. And then I had to change my life so that I began to focus on that which I needed to have die in me. And the first thing that needed to die was fear. And the second thing that needed to die was anger, because these are the two great spiritual toxins in our lives. Those two things had to die in me for me to have life abundant. Then I realized that my arrogance and pride, they needed to die too. Those two things needed to go away. Then I realized that my desire to be perfect, that had to die too. And then I realized, which all the great religious teaching tells us, is what really needed to die was my ego. I had to eliminate my selfishness. I had to learn to live differently, to think differently, to speak differently, to live differently, to have life abundant. And what I found is that as I asked for those things to be taken away, my life changed. You know, our men's group hosted a visit from the local Muslim men's group. They came over here, had a wonderful morning. Islam has something to teach us as Unitarian Universalists. Because Islam, that word means submission or surrender. We don't spend a lot of time as Unitarian Universalists talking about surrender or submission. We're more interested in self-promotion and individualism. But you know, the secret to Easter is to surrender the things that are holding us back, to ask that the obstacles in our lives be removed, so that that germ, that seed of power and beauty and potential can burst forth from us. Because it's inside us already. It's just a matter of making way for the Spirit to flower forth in all of its fullness. And I have had that experience. I know what that's like. I'm here to bear witness. It wasn't until I could do that that I finally became who I am. And brothers and sisters, who I am is just an Osterman, Easter man. I have had that experience in my life, and it changed my life forever. I want that for you. You don't have to change your name. Just change your way of thinking, and speaking, and being in life. And you too can have life rich, abundant, more beautiful than you ever imagined. And I think in my heart of hearts that's what we all come here for, hoping that there is a way forward, that we can have that, and there is a way. And we're in the right place, and we're doing it together. And if the world were full of more people who were prepared to set things down, then what would be lifted up is the Spirit, His love, His justice, His peace, His mercy, is everything that we hold dear and precious as people of faith. Let's go out on this Easter Sunday morning. Let's be models for the world. Let's show the world that real power comes from putting things down, that real love comes from losing that which is holding us back. Let us go forth and be Easter people and change the world with our lives. Let's sing our closing hymn. We're going to sing a different hymn this morning. We are going to sing, going to lay down my sword and shield.